Yo, what's up, everybody? I'm Mateo, and this is Ignorant the Podcast, a podcast where I invite all sorts of different people to make me less ignorant to the things they do, why they do it, how they do it, what it takes, and the perspective they have on life. Thanks for tuning in.
All right, my friend. Good to see you.
Nice seeing you too.
So, this is Antonio. I've known you since I was a kid. I met you when the Rise Up started at Clark Park. Yeah, I learned a lot. You're also the first one to ever get me.
2012.
Yeah, that was a while ago. You're the first. You always had fruit on you every single time, and that was the first time I ever had a mango. Was that the first Rise Up? But yeah. So I wanted to bring you on for tons of reasons, from everything you do for nature, all the different positive movements that you're in. Talk about shrooms now that that's legal, and everything like that. Activism, because that's a part of all that. That how I met you and everything. So yeah, you want to give a brief description of who you are and where you're from? What you do?
So I was born and raised in Southwest Detroit. I'm Coahuiltecan and Boricua by ancestry. That by nation, that would be Mexican and Puerto Rican.
Okay.
I say nation for Puerto Rico intentionally.
Okay.
I'm a Puerto Rican independentista. Like, I believe in Puerto Rico should be not a colony of the United States.
Okay.
Born and raised in Southwest Detroit, working class family, very much a labor household. I grew up, my dad was involved with unions.
Are you a union guy?
Oh, I definitely support unions.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I'm a worker guy.
Yeah.
Definitely support working class people, and
Yeah.
we're in the midst of actually one of the biggest uprisings of unions and workers
Yeah.
since probably the 1920s and 30s. So it's a
Yeah.
pretty unprecedented time. You wouldn't know just by looking on Facebook and checking on the news and
Yeah.
watching CNN or Fox News. Then you're not gonna find that there, but
They're calling it the Great Resignation, right, or something like
yeah.
that.
So the resignation part is a lot of folks switching jobs.
Okay.
A lot of people laid off and then switching careers, and then as the economy's getting back going, those people are working elsewhere, doing other things.
Finding new career paths.
Yeah, finding new career paths.
Dreams.
Yeah, hopefully, ideally. But there's a lot of people who are also striking and
Lots
organizing with their fellow coworkers and getting things done to push back against owners and corporate entities, and that's what's up.
Yeah, I've done some Uber and DoorDash, and I've seen tons of people on strike. Cause I've gone to multiple cities and just tons of different businesses on strike. I love to see it because I quit after the pandemic, being essential and not getting treated like being essential. They raised them nothing, and we lost our bonuses. It's of all times we lose our bonuses, and we were busy the whole time. There wasn't there was a little bit of slow times, but at the beginning we were building respirators, so it's we were slammed,
Yeah, I think that idea and that concept of essential workers made people realize, people who had menial, low respect, low value jobs, service sector jobs, those all of a sudden became so important lifelines for the economy and for people to eat and do well and be well. So they realized the importance of their labor and the value of them giving up their time and their lives. For everybody else, for potentially for evil, but you delivering food to some grandma, that's good. Ultimately,
exactly.
Even if the corporation that's facilitating it isn't good. So everything's
100%.
mixed,
Yeah, there's other types of mixed feelings. What'd you say about Puerto Rico being independent? Why do you feel that way?
So there's so much history. I'll just go to this though. My grandfather, Carlos Belen, was a sugarcane sharecropper.
Oh, no.
And he was born in
Wow.
I think the 1920s or late 20s, maybe early 30s.
Yeah.
And he was that's 30 years after the United States took over Puerto Rico from Spain.
Yeah.
And when the United States took over Puerto Rico from Spain, Spain had already introduced the economía, the sort of plantation system. But there was a bigger percentage of the population owned farm. There were still small farms.
Okay.
And by the time my grandfather was born, the United States governance of that island led to a concentration of sugar cane operations into very, very, very few hands and few families.
Yeah.
So my grandfather didn't see a way out of that system. So he came to Michigan to get away from it. And the United States control of Puerto Rico is the reason that the island is suffering economically. You saw Trump during the pandemic throwing paper towels just absolutely disrespecting the Puerto Rican people. And
Yeah.
there's been a lot of incredible Puerto Rican revolutionary movements for independence since the United States took over, but obviously since the time of Spanish colonialism. And I definitely see myself as a part of that tradition and somebody who's living into those values and wants a democratic society and a people who are free from colonialism.
Yeah.
There's a rule that allows basically all shipping to and from Puerto Rico has to come to Miami.
Okay.
Has to come to Florida, has to come to the United States.
Okay.
So that reduces Puerto Rico's economic capacity in a major way. There's a ton of stuff that is just like that. There are like arbitrary rules that enrich American corporations as opposed to actually allowing Puerto Rico to be a diverse, thriving economy.
Okay.
It has like some of the highest Walmarts per capita. It's a super colonized Latin American country.
Yeah. Aren't there a lot of rich people going there to like avoid taxes?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like the crypto bros is like what they're saying. It's like a lot of like European American settlers who want to escape taxes for cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So,
What is the tax laws? How do they even get away with
I
that?
don't even know the details of that aspect of it, and I think to the extent the government is looking is like, well, we want to cater to these people because we want to bring their wealth to the island and have them spend their money here, whereas the Puerto Rican people are looking at it. These people are buying up beachfront property and trying to restrict our access to it.
Yeah.
We've been coming here for generations, so we're fighting back against this. You could call it like a gentrification, more or less,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think private beaches is one of the most disgusting things ever. They're not even legit, but then they get enforced, and there's nothing you can really do about it at the time. You can maybe go to court, but by then the beach day's gone. The day was ruined.
Totally. And I'll add on, connecting Detroit to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's gone through a bankruptcy process that's a lot like Detroit's, and a lot of my activism and like how I developed and when we met was in the middle of Detroit's bankruptcy. So that was like a big part of my awakening and my the raising of consciousness in me was Detroit's bankruptcy process. But the judge who was in charge of Detroit's bankruptcy literally flew from Detroit to Puerto Rico and started charging millions of dollars to consult on that bankruptcy process. The same financial institutions who were benefiting from, they're called vulture funds, who are benefiting from Detroit's bankruptcy process are down there benefiting from from Puerto Rico's bankruptcy. So the Fiscal Control Board is a lot like emergency management, and I see a lot of parallels between that and the historic relationship of the United States to Latin America vis-a-vis the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and international finance. That's a neo-colonial relationship. It's not like, we can't come and occupy your island and just take your resources directly.
Yeah.
But we can use finance and business and interest rates and loans to take your country from you.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
Yeah.
Like I said, the one thing I want to talk about is the pipeline. But I have no idea. Like I read about it, support how I don't do enough. But so how?
Yeah,
what kind
who does?
You know
Who
what I mean?
does? Like it's impossible to like. I heat my house with natural gas. We all do. So there's a bigger, broader context around energy politics and the history of energy usage, and I think that's more like a really important thing to look at if we're talking about pipelines in particular. For most of humanity, we burned wood for energy. Most of our time on Earth, and that transition kind of started with coal. In England, as an empire, as a world empire, built itself on coal. The transition away from wood to coal was kind of paralleled the rise of English as a world power.
But as far as Michigan goes, where do they want? Where's the pipe that they want to put?
So there's a bunch of pipelines. I couldn't even tell you all of them, to be real with you. There's like Line 5 is a big one we talk about a lot in Michigan, and that runs through the Straits of Mackinac. And it runs down to Sarnia, so it runs from Canada to Canada. It's a Canadian pipeline for a corporation called Enbridge.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
If I knew that in the beginning, I'd have been way more mad. But I know it's sick already because of the natives and stuff.
Yeah, so that's a big one for Native people. But I want to back up and continue to talk about energy history.
Yeah.
So there's the next transition away from coal. We still have a lot of coal plants, and that's a big problem for the world because coal burns dirty as fuck.
Yeah.
I'm big into science and history and ecology, and coal are actually like ancient plants that didn't biodegrade in swamps and stuff like that, and they just squished the
Really?
carbon and the energy into these coal chunks. The
Wow.
same way that oil is formed. It's just like bogs and swamps where like organic matter just stacks on top of each other,
Yeah,
stacking,
yeah.
stacking, stacking, carbon, carbon, carbon. And it stacks and it weighs it down. And it's same process that makes diamonds.
Yeah.
Oil, diamonds, coal, natural gas. These are all ancient forests, swamps, wetlands. Some of them go back to the time where fungi had not evolved enough to break down wood yet.
Dang.
And that's why those things they're in renewable resources, because time will never do that again. Because wood is breaking stuff down, we have different soil, different earth chemistry, different like environmental climatic situations. So that's unrenewable ass resources that we're digging up. You know, they kept digging coal, hard to find coal. And then World War I and II happened, and there's a transition from England to the United States being the world superpower.
Yeah. Okay.
And Nazi Germany was shooting for Azerbaijani oil in the Caucasus, where the real Caucasus, not Caucasians. As we talk about. We talk about the Caucasus Mountains, Azerbaijan, Dagestan, where all these like MMA fighters are coming from, that area of the world.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
So it was like restricting that oil was a big deciding factor in why the United States and Russia and Europe, some parts of Europe, won World War II against Germany, Italy, I think Japan. And that was the transition into the United States time. And the United States time has been crude oil.
Okay.
You know, so that's like, you see in the ocean, those platforms that are getting it. You see a lot of people like roughnecking in Texas.
Yeah.
That's oil. That's normal
That's
crude
American oil.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's all over the world. The biggest deposits are in Venezuela and Saudi Arabia, and that's why we're attacking Venezuela, because they got that oil.
Yeah. I'm totally down to talk about all that stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we, the United States. I say we, but I don't, identify with it. But we're all a part of it. Our tax money goes into that stuff. Our sales tax, all that goes into it. So we've been the oil economy, and everybody knows now because of climate change, because of all the coal and oil that has been burned, has made us know that like, oh, this is unsustainable. This is not good for the earth. There's too much carbon in the atmosphere. You hear the breakdancers in the background going wild.
They go crazy. Ty's always the loudest.
Yeah.
I love that kid.
Yeah.
But
So we're at Motor City Dance Academy. Shout out them out. Love those guys.
Shout out.
But then as the United States is kind of in decline, you could say right now.
Yeah,
China's
seems like
in
it.
ascendance, and there's going to be a transition away from high carbon producing energy at some point in time in the future. 2050 is the number a lot of people are throwing out there. It'll probably continue long into the future, but there's a conversation around like, okay, there's too much carbon in the atmosphere. It's getting too hot. CO2 is a greenhouse gas, so it causes sun to like refract and make the atmosphere warmer. Too much CO2 causes the oceans to acidify, coral to bleach. There's a lot of problems that come from.
There's like record-breaking heat every single year.
Yeah, and record-breaking cold, and record-breaking rain, and droughts. It's really it's not about like global warming, it's about destabilization of climates. That's a more accurate description of what's going on. So natural gas is what you would call transition energy. That's what they call it, this way to describe it. They say natural gas, which is a fossil fuel, is going to get us from the oil and coal era into the green energy future, which is probably going to be nuclear and...
Nuclear is green energy?
Not really. I wouldn't call it green energy, but the future is with fusion. Because I think right now we operate off fission, which is splitting of atoms. Fusion is bringing atoms together. Apparently that's less toxic. But my homie Jesse James Deerenwater, who's a nuclear activist with this group called CRAFT, shout them out. Citizens Resisting. Citizens Resisting Against Fermi 2. Fermi 2 would be most commonly recognized by the average person by this song by Gil Scott-Heron. And we almost lost Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
You heard that one before?
Yeah.
So that song is about Fermi 2, which is a nuclear plant that's to the south of Detroit.
Yeah, towards, like downriver?
Yeah, downriver, exactly.
Yeah.
So that nuclear plant is an example of fission, I believe.
Okay.
I didn't look this up. But,
And so
fusion is... I wouldn't call it green energy though. Let's just say that because it produces stuff, especially the old nuclear. It produces stuff that we don't know what to do with. We have to just like stack it.
Really? Like a physical thing?
Yeah, it's like a physical chemical thing that's like super toxic. It's radioactive. It'll kill you if you come around it. What's funny is like they're storing it in these like warehouses and mountains and crazy places, and the containers they're holding it in only are rated to last like 400 years, but those chemicals break down for like 30,000 years. So it's just more than that even. Like it's just these radioactive chemicals have they call half-life, where a time in which they're toxic that just lasts for a really, really long time.
We don't know what to do with it yet.
Yeah, and we don't know what to do with it yet. Yeah. So that's a big problem. So yeah, like, and another, like, basically the green energy is not ready. Solar panels are getting better. Wind is kind of inconsistent, but it's getting better. But it's still not enough to. The thing about our energy infrastructure is like the moment you turn on a light bulb, they have to kick up the energy somewhere else. It's like direct. Okay. So you can have like, in terms of like the amount of energy that's produced per pound or whatever of energy, like it's called joules. They're called. Oil and gas are some of the more efficient ones. Like we're still learning to harvest the sun better. There's a lot of work that needs to be invested in green energy. And another big issue in this energy conversation is battery storage. We don't necessarily have the capacity to store the energy. So if we're getting a hella sun in the south, we don't have the right tools to store that energy in the right way. And also the United States doesn't have a connected grid, so that like we're up north where it's cloudy, we're not getting that energy from the south where it's sunny. So we have a disconnect. Like our grid is kind of connected, but not fully connected. It's not fully integrated, not integrated enough for green energy to become a reality in the future. It's also owned by a bunch of private companies, even though it's like publicly funded. The whole grid is like it's a publicly owned thing, but it's operated and controlled by monopolies who control certain areas. So we have Consumer Energy and DTE Energy for Michigan. And we have like some regulatory control over them, but not enough. So I've been involved in a number of campaigns. There's a campaign in Detroit called Work For Me DTE, which is trying to get a monopoly energy provider to make their future proposals to have more green energy into it. That's a campaign run by the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition, which is a really badass organization. So I shout them out for sure. They're doing a lot of good work. I'll tell you a little funny intersection between the nonprofit industrial complex and energy politics. I work for the National Wildlife Federation, and we were raising funds, and we were applying for some grant money, and they're like, oh, you want to apply for a grant for DTE? I'm like, I don't really like them, but go ahead if you want to, right? But just so you know, me and my students are going to be at this protest. It's at DTE. I'll try not to make too much waves or whatever. But before I had gotten the job, I had spoken at a hearing against DTE, where DTE had sent a bunch of pastors to speak out at this event that was like the regulatory commission that I was telling you about. And I spoke out at that event. I called out the pastors for being bought and sold by DTE. And the fact that they fund all these groups has more to do with what these people are saying than the actual interests of their, the people who are in their religion and church and shit like that. So when an article came out that was quoting me, that was talking about my students being at a rally, the same time we were asking money from this corporation. We didn't get a call back from them.
Oh, shit.
My boss is like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you being quoted in an article when we're asking for money? And they weren't mad at me, but they're like, let's just not ask money from them. If you don't like them, if you're working against them, let's just not ask for money from them. So that's kind of cool, but it's just interesting, kind of funny little story, a little activism story. But I had the students in my program speaking out at a rally where we were talking about demanding more green energy from DTE.
Can you? Well, I got a question.
I got
another question for later, but I do actually want to talk about that. What can we even do about all the pollution that we put out at downriver, and you know what I mean? Here in just Detroit alone, how are we going to convert that? What are we going to do with those buildings? What's going to happen?
So I think people, like, a lot of times the solutions that people lift up are like, oh, live more sustainably, like, turn off the water when you're washing your dishes and like turn off lights when you're using them. And those are all valid things. I think, like, generally speaking, the average person was more and I'm not using conservative in like the left-right sense, but like conservationist in terms of like protecting water, saving energy resources. I think generally speaking, historically in the past, the average person, the average consumer, the average homeowner was a lot more conservative with their energy usage, and I think we've gotten away from that a lot because it's become so cheap. Natural gas has made energy really cheap, and it's just a kind of a artificial reduction in the actual cost of gas and oil. So at the same time, our economy has come to depend on cheap energy and cheap fuel prices, and when energy prices start going up, the people rise up against government. So everywhere across the world, when governments start defunding energy, it starts getting more expensive, and the people rise up because they can't drive their cars, they can't do their business. It just increases the cost of business enormously. So you see that slump in the economy now because at the beginning of the pandemic, people were flying less, people were traveling less, there was less demand for shit, so the energy demand went way down. So the prices, it was actually like prices for oil were like negative for a while, and like in terms of like futures, which is like a derivative investment side of things, but
You do rather like basically giving gas away for
well,
like a couple
basically
weeks.
they had to pay to store gas.
Yeah,
So
that's
like
what it was.
it's hard to slow down gas once it starts coming up the well. Once you start, because they pump all sorts of water under the ground, super dumb, and air and sand, and once they start pumping that shit into the ground, the oil's got to come up. So like they basically ran out of storage capacity for all the oil there was, and it just cost them money to store the oil. Or store the oil, so that's why oil prices were kind of negative at the beginning of the pandemic. On the backside of the pandemic, it takes a while to ramp up production again back to the demand levels that they're at now. So that's why the price is going up high.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of different inflation from that, and then
Yeah,
you
it does
got
create
all
inflation,
all the shipping problems. Same deal, kind of. They just got
which is part of the
stacked up.
conversation we talk about the Great Resignation. It's like people left their jobs doing shipping work, so
or got sick and
or are doing strike activities. So it's like there's a lot of reasons that logistics are struggling right now. The other piece of this puzzle around why you can't source things and why there's all sorts of logistical issues for shipping and goods, and like there's not enough transistors for car production. So there's like whole lots of cars that don't have the sort of like computer equipment that it needs because they're produced in some of these countries that the United States are going to war with. So the United States is actively at war with China right now. It's an economic war. It's not a hot war. It's a soft power war where we're looking to shame China, to put economic sanctions on China's elite, to use all sorts of other ways to pressure China, because China's taking over. I mean, they're
the Belt and Road Initiative is huge.
Oh, I'm glad you know about that. That's dope.
I know a little bit. If you know more, I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, I love talking about geopolitics. That's like my bag, dog. I love geopolitics. But let me talk about this China, United States stuff a little bit. So a lot of like the problems we're having with the various sectors is because of this war with China, where we're economically fighting them. But rich people in the United States passed NAFTA in 1994. You were probably born around then, right?
Yeah, 95.
Yeah, so a year before you were born,
Yeah.
the United States passed the North American Free Trade Agreement. And that basically initiated, in a bigger way, it was already happening, but in a much bigger way, the deindustrialization of the United States. So we began shipping jobs to Mexico and all over the world.
Yeah.
Reagan kind of entered a partnership with China. It was a little before Reagan, like Nixon. There's a transition of presidents who began opening up the world to China. Up into the 1970s, China was like a very agrarian economy.
What do you mean by that? What does that mean?
Like people were living on farms and growing food to sustain themselves, mostly.
Okay.
So literally in 40 years, 30 years, China's gone from being an agrarian farmer economy to being a massive industrial power.
Okay.
Because we started exporting jobs and sending our jobs over there because they wanted to crush the unions and crush labor here. So, conversation coming full circle. We talk about labor in the beginning, we talk about labor now. So the elite, wealthy, powerful, corporate, whatever you want to call these people, they wanted to ship jobs to China because you can make record profits if you don't produce anything here. You don't got to worry about pollution. You don't got to worry about unions. You don't got to worry about paying people for getting hurt. You don't got to worry about pensions. You just make that stuff in China and bring it back home.
Yep.
So that's the kind of the economy we're in now, and that the fact that China was producing everything for the longest time has given China one of the most advanced economies. There's a collection of cities that people call Shenzhen, but it's like 3 cities. It's like Macau, Shenzhen, and there's another one. And this is basically where all technology is being developed right now in the world. Like all the advancements. Like you could go there and get an iPhone knockoff that has like something you could put a memory stick in there. You can change out batteries because they can do whatever they want. Like the people in Shenzhen, like all these workers realize like, yo, we're making iPhones. We can just make them over here and sell them knockoff iPhones that are the same quality, the same thing.
Black market type deal.
Black market.
Yeah.
So that's where like United States is fighting China because like we call like intellectual property theft, but that's innovation. You know what I'm saying? Like those people are truly like making the discoveries that our companies are buying and selling to us as monopolies.
Yeah.
So we can't get access to that black market stuff that's better, higher quality, more diverse, and we can't have a market here where there's like innovators, creators, brilliant people coming together to make the future technology. So we're waiting on China to do it because we're taking it from them and our corporations are buying it from them.
Yeah.
So it's like a really sticky situation where like we've come to depend on the diversity and the brilliance of the more free market economy. So like at the beginning of the computer era, we kind of had that sort of like hacker open source culture where it's like, oh yeah, we'll all borrow from each other, we'll all steal software from each other. But like Bill Gates drove the model of like, I'm gonna monetize everything. I'm gonna own Microsoft, everything. If you have a company, I'm gonna take out Net Zero. I'm gonna take out Netscape. I'm gonna take out all these other little companies and put my Internet Explorer, Microsoft owns shit in the way. So that monopoly-led corporate sort of thing is in America. But that's not the case in China. They got a lot more competition. So another part of this China versus USA conversation is a corporate thing. So China developed 5G technology before the United States did. There was a company called Huawei.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay, I know.
Huawei. You've heard of Huawei before.
Yeah.
So basically, they produce these 5G routers, like you see a router on the wall over here, and antennas in different places, and they produced it quicker than us. So their companies got ahead of it. So the United States literally banned any country who's working with Huawei. We jailed the daughter of Huawei's owner in Canada and held her in detention and basically shut out Huawei from 5G fields until T-Mobile could get up its 5G operations.
Damn.
So that's like,
That's insane.
it's the same sort of shit as like when the United States overtook England. England was talking about we're talking about intellectual property theft. It was the cotton gin. It was like textiles.
Okay.
That's the kind of technology we were stealing. But when we surpassed England, oil stuff, coal stuff, that's the sort of technology they were innovating, and we took that from them. Now China's innovating, and we just want to make sure our consumer markets are allowed to monopolize. So it's just a weird thing where like there's a more free market in China than there is in the United States. That's the crazy thing to say. That's the reality of the situation, but a lot of Americans are just too ideologically nationalistic to understand the bigger, more important context that's going on.
America. No, when I follow a lot of engineering pages and stuff like that, and some of the dopest engineering stuff comes from China, and when I see some of the machinery that they built for like the Belt and Road and stuff like that, I'm like, they're way ahead. Like they're way ahead. Like it's pretty scary when you see the technology that they have and what they're working with and what their workers are willing to do. Well, that's another thing. So when people say like are their workers being taken care of, or like are they?
So they have a thing. There's a word for it. I don't even know what the word is off the top of my head, but there's like a thing where working 7 days a week, hella hours is it's not good. Not the workers are not taken care of there. I'll say that. And it's like corporations that we control demanding lower prices, Walmarts and these places that help make that a thing. Like there was a thing in the early thousands where Foxconn was one of these companies that like built the iPhones, and they had people living at the places where they worked, and they had to put suicide nets around the buildings to stop people from jumping off and committing suicide. So there are a lot of workers who are like kind of fucked up in China because of the high production sort of like make everything for the West sort of mentality. But at the same time, like there is hella innovation. Some of those workers went on to do other things, and like those people could become entrepreneurs. So it's a crazy hyper capitalism sort of thing that's happening there. And I don't know it well enough. I only know what I look up online and what I learn from other people. So I follow a lot of pages. I follow a lot of conversations around it. But it is a real crazy thing there. And to people to say China's a communist country, that's ridiculous. They are controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. It's a one-party system. They don't have a Democrat and Republican. They have one party. And one of the scary things to me is their system is more meritocratic than ours.
Really?
Like in their system, Trump wouldn't even become a regional governor. He wouldn't become a mayor of a city. He's an incompetent, failed businessman.
Okay, so
Trump,
they wouldn't even allow it.
They would never allow it.
Yeah.
You have to be really good at what the fuck you do
Yeah.
to rise up in that country. Where it's like here, it's about popularity.
Yeah.
And we also have a very ignorant population.
Yeah.
So like we vote for reality TV stars.
Yeah.
You know, we vote for
people want
names.
Joe Rogan to be the president.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like,
Joe fucking Rogan.
Like, you know,
I be going back and forth about Joe. Like I like some of the stuff he brings on, good guests. Like there's some real interesting conversations, but he kind of is really beholden to like right wing like
I think lately
white
business
identity
sides.
politics.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
but he's beholden to white identity politics. He's
Yeah.
like beholden to like white men who feel threatened by like, let's just say leftist culture that's like kind of taken over liberal
Yeah.
culture. So like he's kind of like trying to be a contrarian. He's a comedian, so he's like trying to hit those angles, and he's popular because of these things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because he's talking about a lot of these things. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, the one thing I respect about it is that he does, like when he does get out, like speak ignorantly, he still says like at the end of the day, well, I don't know.
yeah, he's like,
just
I'm an
saying."
idiot.
It's
I'm just a fucking comedian.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So and there's a lot of guys that are so passionate but so ignorant. It's like, all right, you know, that's why I started this show, is because I found myself, you know, during the first Trump election, I found myself getting livid and angry at like something I just read on Facebook, and then I do a little research and I'm like, oh man, and then I realize how many other people are livid and angry, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, like
Yeah.
we're all like, you know, we're allowing our ignorance to control us and to make ignorant statements, and you know, to become, you know, racist or like just arrogant, whatever it is. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
I think we're all easily influenced by identity shit. You know, and I think this is one of the big mistakes the left has made, is investing a lot into this identity politics and this idea of, you know, who you identify as is like who, like, there's like an oppression Olympics where it's like people on the left like arguing to be like, oh, I'm most oppressed. It's just like, okay,
Yeah.
good for, like, okay, like, that doesn't mean you're a good leader.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're a good person. Doesn't mean you behave in a way that's ethical.
Come on,
in fact, like if you're face a lot of early childhood traumas, you're probably gonna replicate some of the things that you saw growing up.
Yeah.
Facts. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, 100%.
Psychologically.
We just talked about that yesterday.
Yeah. Good. Early childhood trauma is something that everybody should talk about. I actually would love to talk about this for a second.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, because what we talked about is how some boys can grow up watching their women get beat, but then become that man, or never, just not even treat women with respect because they didn't see their mom get treated with respect.
Yeah.
But they might not, they would never put their hands on their woman or their mother or anything like that. But you never know. But it's like, but then they eventually, you know, in the argument and all that, they're gonna treat their woman the way that they saw their mother get treated. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And that's just a small example.
100%.
Of childhood trauma. You know.
So I'm gonna read these 10 questions. Not 18, 10 questions. So this is individually within your household. This is like, in ACEs, which stands for adverse childhood experiences. Okay. So the more adverse childhood experiences you have, the more likely you are to develop addiction, be homeless, get involved and go to jail, physically abuse your partner, a lot of things that come of being exposed to these things growing up.
Yeah.
So here's the questions. So it's basically if you answer yes to a question, you say 1, and you just count up your score afterwards.
Yeah.
Did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt?
Yes. Someone.
Yeah. Did a parent or adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured?
Yes. 2.
Did an adult or person at least 5 years or older touch you, fondle you, have to touch you, have you touch their body in a sexual way, or attempt to have or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you? You don't gotta answer these questions. You don't want to. These are personal ass questions.
Yeah, that part, no.
Yeah, me either. I've never been raped growing up, but that a lot of people have.
So no this to that.
Did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you, thought you were important or special, or that your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other?
From a separated stance, yeah, because you get your mom's side, your dad's side, and they're always hating on one another.
Did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it?
Not often, but there's a couple moments. Where our family's down and out,
Yeah,
but
and
not often.
Yeah. For me, like, there's addiction in my family.
Addiction
for sure. It's common in impoverished communities, working class communities. But I never had it that bad, though. My mom really stomped that out of my dad. Before he got too far into parenting and shit like that. But these are real questions. I'm gonna read through them. They're dark, though.
Yeah, I'm all about it.
Were your parents ever divorced or separated? So that's another one. Was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, had something thrown at her, sometimes, often, or very often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit over at least a few minutes or threatened with a knife or a gun?
Yes.
Did you ever live with anyone who's a problem drinker, alcoholic, or used street drugs?
Yes, plenty.
Was a household member depressed, mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Yep. Did a household member go to prison?
Yep.
So bam, your ACEs score is like 7 or
I'm
6.
up there. I think 8. I think I only had 2 that I didn't know.
Yeah, so the research that came out says childhood common is very even in middle class white communities. There's a direct link between childhood trauma and adult onset of chronic disease, as well as depression, suicide, being violent or a victim of violence. More types of trauma increase risk of health, social, and emotional problems, but people usually experience more than one type of trauma. But there's all sorts of studies that came out, and I read this list off because this is the individual shit that we all need to work on. The demons that we have in our closet, the things we are exposed to as kids. So I'm anti-individualism overall, but I think at the end of the day, how you were raised, where like people are like, oh, what's your sign? I'm like, like, when were you born? It's like, okay, what's your relationship to your parents? What is the order in which you were born? Were you an only child? Those are far more important questions to me. I'm gonna learn more about you asking those questions. What's your ACEs score?
What's your ACEs score?
10 times more about you than I learn about if you're a Sagittarius or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's become the religion of the left in a weird way. It's kind of funny.
That is, that's going on every platform. That conversation right there, that's going on every platform.
I haven't studied it long enough to know if there's some sort of like correlation. I don't get into astrology. I love astronomy. I love the stars. I love science. But I'm open to it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna throw it out like it's all trash. Like, but to me, it's like, oh, my ancestors didn't believe that shit. That's like Greek, European shit. That's not like what my people were. We looked at the stars too, and we had our own cosmology. We didn't call shit Sagittarius. That's a Greek ass word. So it's just like, that's not our shit. So there's other shit that's out there, and I do think there is something to numerology, to dates and times, but even that's like the Greco-Roman calendar. It's like there's levels to this, and there's a lot of ways to slice time and the seasons and all that shit. But yeah, for me, like, what's your ACEs score? What'd you experience? And that's how I'm gonna know like where you're at. Like I grow, like, even when the Rise Up days, there's like beef between a lot of people. I'm somebody with a low ACEs score, operating around a ton of people with a ton of trauma in the hood. So my level of communication, the way I move around people, I wasn't as conscious and aware of that as I should be. But getting away from the individual shit, because like we could sit here and talk about individual decisions and like people shit all day. More importantly, California passed a law that's tracking kids' ACEs. So like there's high school counselors and doctors at various levels of their lives who ask kids a set of questions that's just like this, and that way they track it so that they can get those kids into counseling, get those kids into therapy, and really help them. And this is the kind of shit that we need. This is the kind of shit that makes sense. Social workers individually ask kids these questions all the time, and they keep track of it within their social work agency, but there's no interagency like list or tracking of kids who have ACEs. So these kids end up in prison, end up addicted, end up on the street, end up in all sorts of situations, end up in domestic abuse situations, and we're not like helping these people and intervening. And in fact, our society has destroyed the social welfare state, which is essentially policies that would go to help these people: mental health care, doctor visits, dentist visits, social support for moms who have a bunch of kids. All of these things have been whittled away to the point that there's not enough support. So kids grow up with dirty clothes.
Yeah.
You know, they grow up with their moms having to live with fucked up men who abuse them because they need a house and they need food.
Yeah.
And that's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the direction our society's been headed. So we have to think about like intervening as a society to help these people to right the direction we're headed in. And I don't see it enough. And I see too much conversations around like, oh, you're white, or oh, you're this, you're that.
Yeah.
You don't have this, you're not intersection, enough of that. It's just like, come on, like let's talk about systems. Let's talk about history. Let's talk about economies. Let's talk about geopolitics. Let's talk about community. Let's talk about getting people the things that they need to feel a sense of belonging everywhere.
Yeah.
So Joe speaks to the alienated white men who feel like, oh, the culture's coming against me. I've been riding high in this bitch for years. And now all of a sudden, like, intersectionalities come out, and these trans people, and these queer people, and these women of color, and it's like, And the sad thing about it is, the CIA's using this shit now. The fucking, like, so we're like, now the CIA's like, oh, like, you seen that video of this, like, woman who's like, she does a poem that's basically, I'm a Latina, I'm this and that, like, I'm intersectional, I have mental health. She just goes in on, like, this little poem, and she's like, and I work for the CIA, and I feel a sense of belonging, and I belong here. And I'm just like, oh my fucking Lord.
Yeah.
Like, the man has, like, totally stolen, like, it's called postmodern identity politics or postmodern analysis. Comes out of like some French theorists, like a lot of this analysis around like, there's useful stuff there. Kimberly Crenshaw is another theorist who really sharpened a lot of this language. There's very useful shit here, but the left is always developing the analysis that the right-wing reactionaries use to divide and conquer.
Yeah.
So now it's like,
I think
like
I wanna
we
clarify
need to be in
too.
Afghanistan to protect women.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It makes no fucking sense. We have no business being there.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
But go ahead.
Oh, crap.
You gonna clarify something?
Oh, yeah, you're not left or right. It seems like, right? Like,
No, I'm not left or right.
Yeah, because like I noticed you're not afraid to speak on either side.
I'm not left or right. Left or right's a false binary. Like, I would, if anything, I'm like far left.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe far left spectrum, way off the spectrum.
Yeah.
I'm like, I problematicize colonialism. Like that's my analysis is like I'm a radical.
Yeah.
I'm a radical because what radical means, if you look up the word, it just means getting to the roots of things.
Okay.
So if you talk about like what is in biology, the term radical is like it's that first root that comes out.
Yeah.
So it's like what is at the
Oh
core?
shit! Whoa, you just blew my mind. Bro.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Damn, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So what's
Seventh grade
I want
for
to
you.
talk about what's at the root of all this shit.
Yeah.
And like
wow, holy
and
shit.
Even like the socialist, like Marxist, like sort of shit. Like for me, I think every economic analysis, every school of economy is relevant to a specific, just like the Bible.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I don't like Bible literalists. Like the Bible was written thousands of years ago to a specific group of people in a specific society facing a specific like set of like empires colonizing and fucking their shit up. So it's like back when Christianity was like oppressed at different times, they had to write to the Philistines or write to the Peloponnesians or whatever. So like similarly, like people are speaking to like socialism and this shit is like empire, history, like there have been many empires before capitalism, many empires before like Marxism, and all of those are important, and all of them have very similar stories. I mean, like if you look at like the dawn of Nazism, there was a lot of like gender expression and fluidity, and like the club scene in Berlin in the 1930s was very much like our society right now, which is like, and the other piece of this is like the U.S. is kind of like an extension of Nazi Germany, straight up. Like Ford, Walt Disney, the United States is where eugenics was born. Nazi Germany was looking at the United States in the way they colonized the West and colonized indigenous people, and they called that Lebensraum, room to grow. So like when Hitler was talking about taking over Europe and killing the Slavs and like, we're like the superior race, he was looking to American theorists. The people who started the conservation movement were eugenicists. The people who started Sierra Club were eugenicists.
And what does
Margaret
eugenicist mean?
So eugenicist is like this movement that popped up in the 1920s and 30s that said there were like genetically inferior people who we need to stop from breeding.
So yeah,
retarded people,
Yeah.
women of color, people who are chronically poor, addicts. We just need to like remove their ability to breed and remove them from the gene
right.
pool so that we can continue to grow. That's eugenicism.
Okay.
So that's like a
'Cause I
movement
knew
that was
that they
big.
thought like that, but I just didn't know there was a word like that.
Yeah, there's a word like that. And honestly, like, on the conspiracy side of things, I think there's a lot of people in power today who believe similar things, like who want to control populations in sub-Saharan Africa, in the Middle East, in places where there's like a birth ratio, like every couple's making 7 kids. They're like, oh yeah, and like it's common thought in America. Oh, world population's problems, population. It's not about the population. You could fit the population of the United States into like one fucking city if you wanted to. It's really about the lifestyles of the West. United States, we use so much energy, we waste so much, we make so much trash. We invented this disposable lifestyle in the oil era. We invented all that shit. That is something the United States should own and should be a leader in reducing. Instead, we're waiting for other countries to do it. We have no fucking leadership in this country.
That's why when Biden says he wants to lead America to lead the way and reducing climate change and emissions and all that stuff. How are we gonna do that?
Yeah, we're the number 1 oil producer in the world right now. So okay, then just stop it.
Yeah, and like I said, you got when a city like this that the country relies on when it comes to the factories and stuff like that, like in Pennsylvania, like what are you gonna do? How are you gonna stop that like without putting people out of work so fast? And, you know what I mean? And also you'd have to re-educate everything, like how to, and there's a lot of people think that that if we do cancel, then everybody's gonna lose jobs, but we are gonna tenfold the amount of jobs that can be created for sure.
Oh my god,
what I mean?
With a little bit of industrial planning, with a little bit of planning for society, like how many people are having mental breakdowns, breakups, divorces, abuse in the last 2 or 3 years because of the pandemic? And even more so in the last 15 years, like your entire fucking lifetime was like 2008 economic crisis. Boom, you're like what, fucking 10, 12 years old, 14 years old. That crisis is like when you're a child. In Detroit, a third of the city lost their homes. How many think of the kids were abused because their parents were stressed out, or divorced because their parents were stressed out over losing their homes in 2008? My family lost our home in 2000. My family almost broke up because of that shit, but I was in college. I was like grown by the time that happened. But 2009, 8 financial crisis, and there's another financial crisis in like 2015, 14, and then there's the pandemic. So we've gone crisis to pandemic, economy fucked. Our generation doesn't have any wealth. We can't start families. We can't afford to.
Can't buy
all
a
sorts
house.
of crazy pressures. Can't buy a house. And these are how we build wealth in our society. Like I'm kind of like the nuclear family's, to me, not always the healthiest thing, but
the what family?
the nuclear family. The idea is just like man, woman, 3 kids in a house in the suburbs. Like with a house full of all of our own shit. I just don't think humans are evolved to be like that. We're evolved to be in like small communities where everybody knows each other and loves each other and supports. And you can lean into other people and like people be more accountable to other people, because now you can go to your house and you're privately able to like do whatever, do your dirt in the privacy of your own home, like whereas like in more collective societies that sort of thing wasn't happening. If somebody was molesting a kid, motherfuckers found out and they dealt with that motherfucker. They killed his ass.
100%.
But here it's just like, oh, we put him in jail. And we're lucky if they get killed in jail. So
and then they go through more trauma and then become a worse person.
And the people who abuse kids are people who are abused too. So it's like these crazy cycles of violence.
And it's like the weakest punishment. Like they literally have no real consequences. A year. And then they get out early. Or
well,
like,
jail is terrible. I've been in jail. Like it's gross and dirty and shitty and like the food is terrible, but you're not rehabilitating people there. You're not making them reflect on the things they've done. You're not getting them therapy. And a majority of the people who are going to jail are mental health patients.
I think there's no reason that someone should spend more than 2 years or 4 years in jail and not come out a skilled tradesman or fucking like, you know what I mean? Like there should be something.
Yeah,
you know
with therapy, with all sorts of things.
Yeah, there should be something. If they're in there for that long, why are we giving them the resources where they can come out and
better
survive? Be great. You know what I mean? At least
their
get
past.
A job right away. At least know that
Make
hey,
good
I know
with their parents and families. Get a job. Belong to society again. There's this African proverb which I think is really brilliant, and I see it play out in so many social dynamics. And the proverb is like this: is like the child that's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And we got a lot of motherfuckers trying to burn this bitch down because they don't feel the warmth.
Yeah, and burn down your own people, fight with your own people,
fight your family, kill your family, harm your family.
Over stupid differences like what street you came from or whatever.
Getting back to this economic conversation, and I'm not sure what time we gotta get off, but
I could be here all day. I was like, man, I can talk to you for hours, but every time you're like a textbook to me, bro. At least you give me new routes to think. You know what I mean? So and I appreciate.
I'm
that
like the
sure.
fungi.
Yeah,
mycelium. I help open up the brain, and we can talk about that next. But in terms of jobs, though, we just there's so much work to be done.
Yeah.
You look around, you see like buildings that aren't quite insulated enough for this climate.
Yeah.
You look around, you see shit dirty, you see trash on the ground, you see dirt on the ground, you see houses that are falling apart, you see people like we should be fixing all that shit.
Yeah.
We should be getting our houses ready for climate change.
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing that as a society? Like it just makes no sense. There's all these people with mental health crises. Why are we not training more counselors? Why are we not paying counselors more to make it a position that becomes valuable enough to get people in there? Yeah. Why do we pay teachers $30,000 a year, fucking McDonald's wages?
But admin $100,000.
It makes no sense at all.
Yeah,
so like,
kids.
We should raise teachers' wages. We should have more people in the classroom. We should be paying babysitters. We should be paying the people who make society possible. Yeah. We could employ a lot of motherfucking people, like not stacking a bunch of elders into some fucking home where there's like 3 nurses taking care of 50 people and they're just like sitting in their shit for half a day. I mean, that's not how society should be. And that's where we are because it's like a free market and we're just doing it by this and that. No, man, this system's bullshit. It makes no sense. We need planning because the market is not going to take care of itself. What's going to take care of itself is rich people lining their fucking pockets.
So do you think there are some regulations that get in the way of doing some of that good stuff?
Yeah, like of course. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, for sure. There are old bureaucratic systems that exist to expand themselves as opposed to like fixing the problems that they're meant to solve. So I'm not gonna like come hard against and say like government's perfect or government's right or government's the only solution. But I'll say this: if you're only attacking government, what's left? Walmart.
100%.
Nike.
Okay, yeah, I feel that.
Exxon.
Yeah.
And these people are bigger than governments.
Yeah.
Their income is bigger than governments. They're bigger than whole countries. So if we're just attacking government, we're just attacking regulation, we're left to the whims of private capital. And that's no position to be in as a civilized society. And that's kind of where we are now, realistically. They control the government at the end of the day. So if you're just talking about government and not talking about corporate government, if you're just talking about moderate liberals, you're not talking about corporate Democrats, corporate liberals, you're not talking. Okay. You're not really talking about anything.
Yeah,
you're just playing into the left-right binary bullshit.
Yeah. Okay.
But I do also, I went against, sort of like postmodern identity politics. But I also do believe that Dave Chappelle shit came out recently, right?
Yeah.
He got a lot of flack for that thing. I disagree with biological essentialism. I do. I think like.
What do you mean by that?
So biological essentialism is basically the idea is like the sex organs you're born with make your gender and that's who you are.
Oh, okay.
That's what it is. I think indigenous societies have always had two-spirit people here in the Americas. These are people who are born into one sex and they feel and understand and vibrate with another sex and another way of being, like women who want to like hunt, as opposed to garden. Speaking in indigenous terms.
Yeah.
So the idea that it's like, oh, you're a man, you're a woman, you have to do this, you gotta wear pink, you gotta wear blue. I disagree with that. And I see why people are pushing against those things. But people on the left have taken it too far overall and made that racial essentialism or
they
gender
capitalized on it literally.
Yeah, it's a ton of like white suburban kids who like didn't get loved enough by their parents, so they come to the city and they're queer and they're doing this and that and taking up hella space. And not talking about class, not talking about the structural issues that are going on here. So I do have a critique of postmodern identity politics, but it's also at the same time, like I vibe with that. I love my queer family and people. I find myself resonating more with like a lot of like gay and queer people who are just like on point with their politics. I do. But at the same time, I'm not gonna like recognize the way that's not being weaponized against us and to divide us and to keep us in this like left-right bullshit.
Because there's a lot of white privilege in it right now.
Yeah.
Sure, and it's like taken away from the black and brown, and LGBTQ.
And that's true at the same time as it's true that those kids' humanity may have been violated by fucked up situations by their parents and their households, right?
Yeah.
Both things can be true.
Yeah.
That, like, you could be a white person who has a lot of privilege, you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth, and your parents didn't love you. They're alcoholic, you got diddled by your uncle in your house. All those things could be true at the same time.
Yeah.
And they're not mutually exclusive, and we have to, like, open our analysis to accept that all of the possibilities of people's, oppression, fucked upness, situations.
So one thing I'm pretty like I'm like, I don't want to say completely ignorant to, but like I definitely I see it being talked about more, and now it's becoming a problem in the country. What is critical race theory?
Yeah, so critical race theory is kind of a focus on the ways in which the American historical story doesn't include what was happening to minority people.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's
and
all it
people
is.
Don't want it to be talked
so
about
they
in
don't
schools.
want to center the oppressed people in American history.
Yeah.
They want to tell the history of, like, George Washington, superhero, and this and that, and this guy did this, and this guy did this, and this leader did this, and they want to erase the labor movement. They want to erase the civil rights movement. They want to erase what was happening during slavery. These are the kind of people who would, like, fight to keep honoring Columbus.
Yeah.
So this is an extension of that conversation.
Yeah.
So we've been taking down statues all over the country. In Detroit, we got the Columbus statue taken down.
Yeah,
my boy,
I wanted to talk to you
David
about that
Pitawanakwak got that taken down.
Okay.
So this is a white identity response to intersectionality, to intersectional politics, to changing urban cultures, to gay people being accepted, to statues being torn down. This is like a conservative white rural response to that.
Okay.
And it's like it's white identity politics. That's really what it is. It comes down to, I'll critique left-wing identity politics only if we're willing to critique right-wing identity politics, which is like, you have to put this to a hard point, you have a bunch of people paying oh my god, what is the name of this group? A lot of the it's not the Heritage Foundation. What is the organization, the right-wing organization that chooses Supreme Court justices?
That chooses. What, you talking like the NRA?
No, it's there's a conservative organization that Federalist Society.
Okay.
It's called the Federalist Society. A lot of people don't know what it is.
I don't.
But these sorts of institutions, like these right-wing institutions, these right-wing think tanks, and basically the Federalist Society, like, grooms right-wing judges, and they get a lot of money from people who, like, want to protect abortion.
Oh,
so abortion is like a right-wing identity politic issue. It's like people.
It's the most ridiculous thing.
Yeah, everybody wants to protect babies. The idea of killing a baby is the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
But all these, like, rich dudes who fuck their lover and get her pregnant, like, oh, abort that, please.
Yeah, literally.
So it's like, everybody wants to abort it until it's their own nut, like, that they're trying to, like, keep their wife from knowing about it. They're all hypocrites.
No, for sure.
So basically, like, the judges that they, like, so they champion abortion, and that's the selling point to get millions of people across America to give them money. But what they're actually doing is, like, ensuring the judges are pro-corporate, anti-labor.
Okay.
So they've been, like, very, very successfully. I mean, look at all these Supreme Court judges. Like, 6 of these motherfuckers are Federalist Society people.
Okay.
So, like,
they're part of that.
They're part of the Federalist Society.
Okay.
Yeah. But, like, there's a lot of things that are like that. Like, they just, like, play into the identity politics as a way to, like, lie to you and fuck with you. And
make it comfortable.
That's what we need in the United States, ultimately. I'm kind of getting to this point around identity politics. Let me close that conversation. We can talk about some cooler shit. They need you in camps, tribal camps, where it's your identity. They're attacking who you are and how you define yourself as a way to get to your heart. It's like emotionally potent oversimplification.
Okay.
I just want to, like, hit you with something that's so raw, so emotional, it gets you to, like, miss out what's really happening.
Yeah.
It's like, look here, I'm stealing your phone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's
100%.
that is, like, the left and the right to me, and that's why, like, I'm like, fuck that bullshit. And what we need is like a working class revolution. You know, what we need is more social workers, more mental health therapists, better paid teachers, more construction jobs to fix our homes, fix our roads, fix our infrastructure. We got no fucking high-speed trains in this country. I want to go to California in 2 hours, in 3 hours, in 5 hours, whatever, as opposed to a 14 or whatever. It shouldn't just be planes, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just, we're behind.
Yeah.
And because we're fighting each other over abortion and trans people, like, why is that an issue? Like, let motherfuckers do their shit. Like, you want to be the party of, like, personal shit? Like, let somebody, if they want to be gay, then let them be gay.
Yeah. Why invest that valuable political time on this conversation? Yeah, it's supposed to be changing the world, doing what we need.
So we glossed over like 10 issues that we want to talk about.
I know, that sounds like I do kind of tap back into the Belt and Road Project for people that don't know about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm gonna take this one big, full scale too.
I'm down.
So like I'm gonna go out big.
I've been super curious about this in so many different ways.
So the big picture in geopolitical theory. So geopolitics is the study of demography, which is like who are the people there, what languages do they speak, how do they live, where do they live in a geographic setting. That's demography. It's a study of economics. It's a study of politics. It's a study of geography, which is like, so like countries that are successful have big rivers. So the Mississippi, which takes the bread belt, the heartland of America, you can take a boat from there out to the world. That's why the United States is the breadbasket of the world. That's why the Midwest is the breadbasket. Because of all the farms and lush agricultural opportunities in the center of the country, you can take a boat to get there. So that's an example of geopolitics. So China doesn't have that. If you take a look at a map, so China's the shape of my hand. Let's just say that. It's not really, but kind of this shape. 90% of China's population lives right here.
Is that like the Taiwan side?
Yeah, the Taiwan side, the Hong Kong side, the Japan side, the Australia side. So this is here. Europe is over here. This is mountains. This is desert. This is forest. So like, so what I'm showing is like the south of my hand is forest. The ocean is to the right of my hand, like where China's eastern coast is, and the west is like desert and mountains and like rough terrain. So China, basically, if the United States wanted to fuck up China, wanted to blockade China with boats because we have the strongest military, the navy in the world, we can use Japan, South Korea, and all these countries in Taiwan off the coast of China and our navy to block China in. So China wants to gain access to the rest of the world for trade. So they're creating pipelines, railways, they're doing ports, and they're trying to basically bypass the ability of the West to blockade them. So the Belt and Road Initiative is born of that. The Silk Road.
That's a whole nother way to look at it.
So the Silk Road, and that's the geopolitical analysis. That's like the true analysis. And I'll get to the part of the United States and why we're opposing it in a second. But the Silk Road was something that existed in the middle of the, I guess, 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. And it was because China made such good shit that the West wanted it. And it was actually bankrupting Europe because the rich people all wanted, so like you had wool and you had cotton. And those things are not the softest materials. We didn't have like the technology to make them soft and lush, plush and nice. Rich people wanted that silk. They wanted that silk. They wanted fine china. They wanted fine Chinese dishes, right? So like they would purchase those things with gold. And China was stacking up all the gold because they made all the good shit. So we were doing intellectual property theft and stealing the silk abilities, stealing all these things. So like the only way that England was allowed to balance out the loss of gold was by selling drugs, and they sold opium to China. And China's like, whoa, a bunch of our rich people are like being lazy, incompetent, fucking up their families, using opium. There's all this cheap opium coming in our country. It's really destabilizing. So we're gonna make opium illegal. And England's like, oh, no. That's how we get your gold. We're not gonna allow you to make it illegal. So this is called the Opium Wars, where England went to war with China because China banned opium. And basically this starts the 100 years of shame for China, where they were occupied by England, occupied by Japan, colonized and fucked up. They have a civil war. The Maoists, which is like you could call it the left, but it's not really left. They're like authoritarian.
Yeah.
So they like go through the Great March, where they pick up the peasants all over the countryside and they march over to the coast where all the people are, and they basically fuck up the Republic of China, which is Taiwan.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
the Republic of China is Taiwan. So that was the old government of China. The People's Republic of China is the communist government.
Okay.
So that's why, like, when the United States recognizes Taiwan, it's controversial.
Yeah. Okay.
Because
so,
that's
yeah.
the old government, and they claim China still. They claim to be the active government in China, and they had
Taiwan
a seat.
does claim China.
Yeah, they claim China.
They want to, or do you think
They do. Yeah, they want to.
threat?
They want to. They want the United States to overthrow the communist government so they could take over.
Oh, that's what you mean by claim China. They
Yeah.
don't claim the government of China. Or whatever.
They claim the land.
They
of
want to
China.
claim the land.
The
yeah.
people of China, the land of China.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the situation there, and so back out to broad picture. So there's like two geopolitical schools of thoughts. There's like one that's like you control the world's ocean, and one that you control the world island. The world island is Eurasia.
Okay.
It's so fucking stupid that people think Asia or Europe is its own continent. There's a straight line in the middle of it. It's not a fucking continent. It's a section of Eurasia. It's one landmass. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Okay.
so
it's not.
You hear that like there's 7 continents: Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Australia.
Yeah, no. That if you look at the map, that's all connected.
Well, not everything. I mean, North America, South America is connected, but there's like it's an isthmus. It's a really tiny piece of land. I could see how you'd want it like north and south. It makes sense.
Yeah,
Africa,
but,
there's kind of connected through the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, but it's not really connected. But culturally speaking, the world culture comes out of the Mediterranean. You know, everybody like North Africa, the empires that were there. Like there's a lot of culture came out of the Mediterranean and the Middle East and Baghdad and that sort of. There's a lot there. But these two schools of thought are control the ocean or control the world island. And like it's in the United States' interest to not have the world island connect and unite. So that means like Germany, Russia, China being at peace and connecting their economies. Because it's such a big landmass with all of the people and billions of people. If that landmass was like integrated and working in ways that weren't war,
and able to trade with easily,
they would take over from England and the United States. And the white, settler places where England and the United States set up their English colonies. And like Taiwan and Hong Kong are English colony. I mean, Hong Kong isn't. It's an English colony.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So, because I know it's like separate, basically, but like.
So when the Opium War happened,
English.
they said, "Oh, we're taking this island, and this is the center." So like, Hong Kong was allowed to like be part of the world capitalism market, while China was agrarian. So that's why they had the crazy technologies and everything. And they would use the labor of China and the poor peasant class labor. So that's how the beginning of China began to rise in that way.
Okay.
So all that is to say is the Belt and Road Initiative is a desire to use that like theory of the world island and to bring it together with trade and economy. But there's a lot of like fault lines in that island. India versus China is a fault line. India versus Pakistan is a fault line. Azerbaijan versus Armenia is a fault line. Turkey. So like, there's all these countries who have historically like were empires and they've declined, and they Iran versus Saudi Arabia. There's a bunch of beefs between countries that are in Eurasia, and those beefs are like where the manipulations happen, where the playings. All the wars in the future are going to be fought on the periphery of Russia, Iran, and China.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Because right now it's like Russia, China, Iran. Those are the ones the United States is going after and trying to kill. So that's the beginning, and that's the abridged version. There's a lot more little nuances here and there.
Yeah, because aren't there like a lot of unfair deals being made between like? Isn't some in Turkey not too happy about?
It's no less unfair than with the United States. I mentioned the IMF and the World Bank earlier, and basically like, for instance, I'll do an example of Chile. So the United States would start a military coup in Chile, overthrow the democratically leftist government that was there because that government wanted to take land or make things more equitable or help out the poor or do whatever. So they'd overthrow that government because U.S. corporations were under threat. This is facts. I mean, if you look at like the there are these brothers who started the CIA, and one was a state. What is their names? The D, something D. Anyways, these two brothers, they had like all this like money in banana plantations. That's where you get the term Banana Republic from. Dulles brothers, Dulles International Airport.
Okay.
So these are the Dulles brothers, and they started the CIA after World War II, I think. Basically, will fuck up Chile, will overthrow their government, and that they'll need money when they have to restructure their government.
Yeah.
So we'll use the IMF and the World Bank to give them money, and we'll do interest rates that they can't afford. And when they can't pay back that money, we'll say privatize this, employ this economic policy.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they're doing to Turkey and stuff like that. Yeah.
So, and Turkey's situation is nuanced, man, because like, so in Turkey's situation, Erdogan is a populist leader in a way. The Ottomans sided with the wrong side in World War I and lost.
Okay.
So the Ottoman Empire stretched from North Africa, in Egypt area, through the Levant, which is Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel. So they controlled all that shit. They didn't control the Saudi Arabia area or the Hijaz and all those areas, but they did control the Levant. Historically, they were much bigger. But the Ottoman Empire was huge for a long time. And basically, like, they threatened Europe's access to oil.
Okay.
And they basically, like, they were on the wrong side. They lost that war. The Ottoman Empire was broke up and France and England split it.
Okay.
So that's why Lebanon is French. It's a lot of French pastries, French culture. The maritime Christians got Lebanon. So, like, it's divide and conquer. So France and England during the wars were like, hey, empires, what do they call it? The Hashemite empires. Like, hey, like they basically like promised everybody a bit of land after they broke up the Ottoman Empire. And that's how like the Arab countries were created. Yeah. And that's why those countries are falling apart, because they're fake. Any country with a border that's a line, that's just countries borders should be like geographic.
Yeah.
It should be a desert, it should be a river, it should be a culture, it should be a language. And like African countries, it's the same shit. They're like, oh, okay, this is Sudan, this is this is this. So these are fake borders that have all these little tiny groups involved in them. So if you have like 16 minority groups in this country, you can use these minority groups to play against each other so you can continue to extract. Okay. And that's neocolonialism. And that's like also how human rights is played out today. Yeah. So we don't like, you know, put the Houthis versus the Tutsis anymore like they did with the Hotel Rwanda shit. Okay. Now we say like the Uyghurs are being oppressed in Western China. Yeah. And that's going to interrupt the Belt and Road Initiative. Okay. So like that's... Now it's like we're focused on the human rights of the people in Western China.
Oh, so we should interrupt it. Yeah, no, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
So it's just like, yeah, it's all these, it's the same politics in a different form.
Yeah.
It's a mess. But I could talk with geopolitics all day.
Yeah.
This is my favorite issues.
Let's tap in on the shroom topic a little bit.
Yeah.
Switch it up.
Yeah.
Because you're all about shrooms, all the way from like literally the amazing ones that grow all over the forest.
Yeah.
To, you know, the trippy kind.
I love foraging.
Yeah, what is
for mushrooms.
So, because like growing up, you know, parents would be like, "Oh, don't touch that! Don't, you know what?"
Well, it's actually a good reason to have a little bit of mycophobia if you don't know. You know, the ignorant podcast. If you're ignorant of mushrooms,
be careful.
Be careful. Yeah. You have to be very certain what you're eating when you're consuming mushrooms. Luckily, there's probably like 15, 12, 8, you know, whatever you want to count it. There's 8 varieties. There's like thousands and thousands and thousands of species of mushrooms. Okay, yeah. So there's like 8 to like 12, 15 that are very common, very obvious, and the lookalikes are easy to tell apart. Yeah. So I would say people start with those. You know, there's a podcast called Learn Your Land. Okay. And this dude Adam Harrington is the shit. He's so interesting, not funny.
It's clearly
not funny.
He's not funny enough.
He's not entertaining by any means, but like he's very smart. You know, he's very like kind of corny. Real clean, clean, nice white boy. He's real cool. So like, his podcast or his YouTube videos are wonderful in teaching you how to like identify mushrooms. But there's a number of things you gotta look for. I could go through them. It's kind of dorky, but like, how the top of it looks, how the bottom of it looks. That's the sexual surface. Is it pores? Is it gills? Is it a type of like a mushroom that's like a ball? They call gastro mushrooms, where like it's like stuff that like powder that comes up when they're ready. The spores pop out of the inside. Yeah. So there's the sexual surface and the way that the mushroom generates spores is different per species. So that's a big factor. What it was growing on. Was it growing just out of the soil? What are the trees like nearby it? Yeah. What are the spores? If you get a microscope, what does the spore look like? Yeah. What is the color of the spores? Okay. So all of these things are indicators that'll tell you what species it is. And when you figure out some of them, do the gills run down the stem? That's decurrent. There's a lot of like things you gotta know to learn to identify mushrooms. But if you want to like identify a mushroom on like a page, this Facebook page is like mushroom identification page. You can just like take a picture of the top, take a picture of the bottom, take a picture of the forest where it comes from, and try and characterize where it comes from and tell where you are in the world. And usually that's enough information that somebody could help you identify them. But for me, I say start with the edibles. Chicken of the woods, hen of the woods, maitake, which is hen of the woods. There's honey mushrooms, chanterelles.
And those are just good to eat.
Those are great to eat. And there's a species that I really like called there's ones like hedgehog, lion's mane, and these ones like psilocybin have neuroregenerative properties. So like this neuroregenerative idea is like when you're a baby, you're born and like your brain is like plugged into the whole fucking universe. Like every part of your brain's active, and like as you grow up and get older, those neural pathways are sharpened and hardened and skilled. Like your brain continues to evolve and grow, just like a river going through land. If you have like a little bit of a trickle, and then if you have a torrent of rain, it's gonna make a pathway. So your brain has pathways, and they get strengthened based on stimuli in the environment. So like, you know, learning to touch shit, like, oh, I can do things, I can move things, I can get food. The pathway in your brain that allows you to grab things and hold things is strengthened over time as a baby, and you prune off other pathways you don't need. So similarly, your response to stress can be a pathway. So you go through time. We all face stresses. There's external shit we can't control. Mom said this, and girlfriend did that, work did this. And like the impact of stress on your brain can get in a pattern. And that's like depression. You know, there's a lot of like, maybe those patterns are informed by trauma in your childhood, but there's a lot of reasons that your brain can get into patterns. And our brains are pattern seeking tools. That's what they're built for, is finding patterns. Paranoid schizophrenia is like you find the wrong patterns. You know, you're thinking like this is this, you know, like, and that happens when you do shrooms sometimes. You know, you get a little paranoid. Same thing with weed. But
so that's what that is.
Yeah, it's patterns. We are pattern finding machines. So like your brain can develop strong neural pathways, and psilocybin and magical mushrooms. I don't hear myself in my mic, but
I had to like turn it. There you go.
Yeah, so magical mushrooms, essentially they break up those pathways and allow you to form new pathways. So that's what makes psilocybin, and definitely lion's mane too, wonderful for addicts. If they have the intention of breaking their habit, like you can.
And this doesn't get you high.
It gets you high. Psilocybin does, but lion's mane doesn't.
Oh, that's what I mean.
So yeah, lion's mane is great.
Healing.
It has neuroregenerative properties. Yep. So lion's mane is wonderful. I definitely recommend utilizing lion's mane. Especially if you're sensitive to psilocybin, it's wonderful. Because like psilocybin ain't for everybody. You know, like some people use it as an addictive drug. Some people also, if they have a history of like psychopathy or like, you know, losing like their sense of reality, it could trigger that in people. So like people who have like those sorts of like histories, it's better to use something like lion's mane. But psilocybin is wonderful for helping reset your mind when you're kind of in a rut. You know, you're stuck in, you know, your car digs in the mud. That's a rut.
I really find myself sometimes, and I don't even do shrooms that often, but sometimes I'm just like, I need to restart. Like I need to close my, like even when I quit my job, like that was from I literally was like, I need to ask shrooms what I need to do. Like, you know, and I literally tripped and I just sat outside and was like, do I need to quit? Like I'm not happy. Like, you know what's going on?
I mean, you're not asking the shrooms, you're asking yourself. You know, ultimately, because the answer's within you. Like there's no external thing that's gonna get you there. It's allowing you to open up another part of yourself. Allowing you to express yourself in a fuller way, allowing you to see the things that have been holding you up. I mean, when I had bad trips, I'm thinking of all these negative experiences I had with people that like stack up over time and cause me not to move freely and flexibly and beautifully. Like when I'm in my zone, when I'm like locked in, when I'm like flowing, living in a flow state in life, I'm meeting the right people, having the right conversations. Anything I ask for in the universe, it just comes to me naturally. So like when you're out of that state of mind, it's good to check in with yourself every now and again. Reset yourself. Open up those pathways. Break up some of the bullshit, you know, like.
When I was bartending full time downtown, like especially after the pandemic, it was like by the time I would even be walking around. At first, it's like, oh man, this is beautiful. It's gonna be back in the city, blah blah. And then after like a few weeks, I'm like, oh my god, I'm surrounded by cement and glass everywhere I look.
And assholes.
Yeah,
glass and drunk
the people
assholes.
suck too.
And people are like trying to
it's like,
pick up women drunk and shit like that. It's terrible.
Or fuck with you or whatever. It's just like, man.
Yeah, scam you, like yell at you, give you
Coke.
shitty tips. Yeah, sell you coke, exactly.
All that crazy
Yeah,
shit.
damn. That's real as fuck.
Yeah. You know, and I literally said like I'd have to
and
take
that's big
shrooms
into the
and just
bartending
chill
scene
out.
too. You know, like the coke is a big part of the restaurant culture too. So
it is. How many times people ask me if I have coke like to sell them? You know what I mean? Like even customers or like coworkers. You know, I'm like, nah, I don't do that.
Or
stuff.
Adderall. Adderall's like coke more or less. You know.
Yeah, that's crazy. What do you think about the what kind of like shrooms with PTSD and stuff like that? What
wonderful for PTSD.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's trauma. You know, it's like shitty pathways. It's just you jarred in your brain, and it's wonderful for that. It's good for PTSD. It's good for depression. It's good for treating addiction if you're going into it with that intention of breaking the habits of addiction. You know, it's wonderful for that.
I want to express this too because when we were talking about making it legal on a lot of the news platforms, when I go through the comments, it was like a lot of people of color that were like, just thought it was such a bad thing. Like, no, we can't do this. Everybody told us just gonna become a tweaker and blah blah blah. And it's like, well, we need it the most. Like, the people of color,
totally.
Like, especially if you've been oppressed your whole life, like you should probably tap into some shrooms.
Yeah, that's
like,
that Christian ass, like sort of like conservative like mentality, and also just like negative exposure to crack.
Yeah.
Like the lasting impact on crack on culture and people's like experiences with drugs is really brutal. And there's a whole history behind that with the CIA bringing crack from Colombia so they can fight left-wing rebels.
Yeah.
That's the facts. That's the history. They were running it up to Freeway Rick Ross. They was running it up to all sorts of people
crazy.
to fund fighting left-wing people in Latin America.
Yeah.
And then that's like when there was a war happening with left-wing people, they would open up immigration so those people could flee. So you got waves of Cuban Americans who are very conservative. You have waves of Venezuelans who are conservative coming in this country now. And that's why Cubans are right-wing, and that's why Venezuelans are right-wing. It's because we open up the people who are part of our team, who are trying to overthrow those governments, who are rich, light skin, to come to this country. It's so funny. Like people, there's this really hilarious meme about Venezuelans where it's like, the government for Venezuela took everything from my family, and it's like their family, and it's like a plantation where there's like people of color working there. It's like it's just true for Cubans too. It's fucked up. But that's history. You know, you gotta include the geopolitics in history. Otherwise, you're not talking about anything. You're talking about we're fighting socialism. It's like no, you're fighting for Dole Banana to continue to have its banana plantations.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you here all night, but I'll have to have you back on again to talk more nature. And, because today was like a lot of politics stuff like that, which I loved it. I liked it a lot. Yeah,
no doubt.
But I definitely want to come back because with the bees and
youth programs, nature. Oh yeah, I do a lot of work with indigenous peoples too. So that's.
I did want to talk about Black to the Land.
Yeah, Black to the Land.
Yeah. I definitely want to get connected. I actually reached out to them on LinkedIn to them and said I'd love to talk or whatever.
To who?
So, the Black to the Land like LinkedIn page.
We have a LinkedIn page. I
think,
know that.
or maybe it was like shared through all over through LinkedIn. I saw there's something. Yeah. But I was like, I'd love to sit down there. Are you an organizer?
So I'm a co-founder. I'm one of the co-founders.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And our Facebook page is kind of active, so you can join the private group on Facebook. That's one thing. Okay. Another way to get involved is just like to follow our Instagram and put on the notifications for the events we do on Instagram. But one of the co-founders of Black to the Land. It's a super dope group. Wonderful. And basically, it's a group of a lot of single mothers, just a lot of people who just want to get outdoors, connect with nature together, and we found it's safer, more comfortable to pool resources, to go together. Another African proverb is like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Okay.
So we go together to different places. We go far and go to different places.
Fishing and all that. So you're doing a lot. So
fishing. We're gonna be doing some hunting coming up soon.
Oh, sweet.
We're doing processing animal hides. We do.
Nice.
A bunch of the women in the group shoot and practice with guns. A bunch of us are gardeners and farmers. A bunch of us work in like African-centered or spiritual different groups, you know. So we have like more ancestry-oriented orientations. You know, I do beekeeping. So we have a lot of little pieces. We're getting a lot of traction right now.
Yeah.
We're kind of on fire. It's pretty dope.
That's so because I found it and I didn't know you were part of it.
Yeah.
I know you were part of it. Yeah. And also, I got another question because I want to reach out for activism too. What do you know about New Era Detroit? I was gonna reach out to them, and I was telling Mav because I ran into them at this thing, and Mav was like, "Well, you should sit down with Antonio and talk about." And I was like, well, he's like, I know they're
militant.
militant.
Public on a podcast about New Era Detroit. Hilarious.
Well, I mean, I kind of rock with it, but I'm like, well, you know, what's going on? What's the, you know, what's, you know?
It's a mixture, man. It's a mixture. Like, you could say like they're one of the closer things to the Black Panthers. Let's say that.
Okay, yeah.
But they're like social media era where they're just like, let's film ourselves being kind of militant and like, it's a lot of hood dudes who are just like getting drunk, using the platform to hit on women. It's just like they're just dudes. There's some good work happening. I see some cool accountability. I see some good stuff. But they kind of have some politics that I don't agree with, and they kind of move in ways that I don't agree with. They kind of are like the nuclear family, men, women. It's just like there's a number. I mean, that's not just the one reason. It's just more broadly like any group or organization that's centering like one male leader who's like barking commands at people and shit like that. Like it's just like it's just kind of old to me. It's just kind of corny to me a little bit. You know, where is the good movement happening? I'm not gonna say don't fuck with them. You know what I'm saying? I say go and find out for yourself and get to know them and see what they're really about. That's what I would say. But I would say, like, look out for some of these things. You know, look out for some of these things. Like, any situation where, like, women are subordinated, I'm just not feeling it. Like, all the best movements I know and I'm a part of, women are at the center and leading a lot of them, you know? So it's like, that's, to me, a good indicator of, like, the health of an activism organism.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I actually personally would love to do, I think this is where my future work will be at some point, is there's a crisis of masculinity in this country. Men are at a crisis in a major way. Our grandpas had good ass factory jobs that could get you a home in the suburbs, take care of you. Your wife didn't need to work. Our fathers were in this transition phase, the Reagan era, kind of like
starting to work.
Highly individualized. Women are starting to work, but like still, the men are still kind of holding it down. The major breadwinners, women are doing kind of like different work. So now we're in this era where like the men can't get good enough jobs because the economy's transitioned from industrial, good-paying jobs. Because back when our grandpas were alive, the United States was China.
Yeah,
we were producing everything. Like, because Europe had destroyed its industrial bases, we were selling and producing everything. And we were the only place with industrial shit, industrial factories. So we were making everything. So that's why you could have an industrial job that paid. But then since they started attacking labor and undermining industry, and we became a consumer society, now services is like what our economy mostly is. And these people...
And women are the best at that.
Yeah,
so
perhaps.
Women are the type of workforce kind of.
Yeah, perhaps you could say. I do think like
in the
women,
majority.
I'd hesitate to say it just like that, but probably, probably there's something true to like. I find that women are often more empathetic and more thoughtful and more like caring and like more aware of emotional stuff. Where like in our culture, men are like hide your emotions, and sometimes it's reinforced by women too. But that's just like internalized patriarchy and bullshit.
Very true.
It is reinforced by women, so like, because the model of manhood that they've come to see, and then there's a biological thing that's undergirding all of it. So at the end of the day, we're lizards, and we'd be like, my pussy, bah. That's like where we come from. And then there's a society, and then there's like newer values and norms and ideals and economies that are changing and switching to make it so that like. You got a lot of single mothers who have to like be the primary breadwinners, and men, like, men are stronger naturally. Generally speaking, not always. There's anomalies, but on average, men have more extra muscle, like muscle tone, testosterone. We're built to fight. To be a little more disposable in that way, like, because the women need to make the babies. So. So it's there's a big crisis in that I think we're going back to the lizard brain, and this is like why Joe Rogan is popular in a lot of ways, because men have lost their esteem of being able to provide because we can't anymore.
Yeah.
So we're looking to like find and build ourselves up on all sorts of artificial shit, social media, like whatever. We're all clout chasing to be able to like achieve the higher status.
Yeah.
That's just kind of like an evolutionary thing. At the end of the day, it's like if you're handsome, if you're, you know, like an athlete, or you want to be the best at whatever you do, so that you can recreate, produce more, show, like whatever, esteem. You know, everybody wants esteem too. We all want to be respected, loved, admired. Not everybody, but generally speaking, like these are stereotypes. We're operating purely within the realm of stereotypes right now. But there's some truth to stereotypes. There's some truth to these patterns within people and within cultures and society over time. So yeah, men are in a crisis, and I see it, and like I hate the people who stand out in that crisis are Joe Rogans. You know, like, and I do jujitsu.
He doesn't.
I do jujitsu. I run. I take care of my body.
And all the time. Like the fact that it's a thing, he clowns it. He's like, oh, what is that? What is that? And that's one thing I don't fuck with.
He wants to pretend it's not a thing. Yeah, you know, like, but we all know it's a thing. We all enforce it, men and women. So it's like it's a neutral thing, but it's just like a reflection of a patriarchal society. And like Joe Rogan, like many white people come from like, you know, backgrounds where like, oh yeah, my childhood wasn't so bad. The society's not so bad. You know, but if you're a person of color, you're like, oh yeah, when your parents were like moving out to the suburbs, we were stuck in the fucking ghetto. We were getting served up crack. It kind of was bad. You know what I'm saying? Like,
all we had was liquor stores and McDonald's.
So like MAGA resonates with people who grew up in the suburbs. People who grew up in a white picket fence. And that's why like the segregation of Metro Detroit, segregation of black and brown people, and differentiation, balkanization is what they use in other parts of the world. That's a positive movement for maintaining power and control by corporate people. White people separating, going to the suburbs, and like pretending racism doesn't exist anymore. That's a positive move, and Joe Rogan represents all those ideals. He's the suburbs guy, and the suburbs is who America is now. Both political parties are fighting for white women in the suburbs. It's demographic and geographic. You know, it's like Detroit is 5 million people. Metro Detroit, people who identify with Detroit, who walk around the world saying they're Detroiters. It's 5 or 6 million people. How many are in the city of Detroit? 600,000.
Okay.
All those surrounding suburbs where the wealthy white people left the city to go to. The city was 2 million people in 1940 when America was great. And black and brown people lived in tiny little segregated ghettos. And then the white people left, and the black and brown people spread out into the entire city. Now the average income of the city is $26K a year, and the average income of Oakland County is like $80K a year.
Yeah, for sure.
There's some parts of Oakland County where southern part of Bloomfield Hills, the average income is $386,000 a year.
And the houses are way more than that.
It's crazy.
100%.
So Joe Rogan speaks to those people, and I think there needs to be a healthy masculinity where men can be subs. Is a man in fear because he likes to be dominated by women, say sexually or otherwise in the home? Like, maybe, I don't know. Like, that's not for me.
Who's to determine that?
That's not for me.
And that guy still might be trash.
And that guy might be cool as fuck. He could be trash. He could be cool as fuck. So it's like, I'm not gonna sit here and like judge a whole like. Everybody's got their sexual proclivities, which is a reflection of your trauma and your history and your past and your upbringing and your siblings and the community you came from. So it's like, why are we gonna sit here and like, this is what men are, and this is what it means to be a man, and like we have sissy boys as the man, we got a bunch of fucking cucks, you know? It's like, what the fuck is this bullshit? You know, like, if he was truly believing in freedom the way he espouses, why can't a man be free to be a sub? Why can't a man be free to take it in the ass from his wife? To be dominated by his wife? That's not for me. I prefer an egalitarian situation. I tend to lean dom in life. You know, I tend to like, but that's not everybody, and I don't expect everybody to be like that. And to reduce manhood to that is that same toxic shit of like, oh, don't have emotions. But also at the same time, I think we've leaned super hard into like victimhood and like, so the thing I do like.
Men,
the whole culture, America. It's like we're all everybody's perpetually trying to be the biggest victim here. It's disgusting because at the end of the day, the victims are the ones who are at the end of the guns that we produce. The victims are the ones with the boot on their fucking neck. All over the world, we're overthrowing governments. Those are the victims. This country is like we barely have shit to complain about, really.
I agree.
But at the end of the day,
There's a lot to fight for, but there's not much.
But I say that because in like a lower, there's this thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and at the base level is like food, water, shelter. So we got a lot of those taken care of. Yeah. But the psychological needs, which are higher on the pyramid, which are like if you get those lower ones taken care of, we don't have much to complain about in terms of a lot of the physical needs. But that's not even true that much anymore because there's a lot of poor people, a lot of people who can't afford to eat. Yeah. I was driving in Southwest Detroit today. I was driving in Southwest, and the lines at the fucking food pantry were around the fucking block, and I'm like, God damn, this is the 1930s, you know, like where people are standing in trench coats in a line waiting to get given bread. Yeah. This is the same shit now.
When, like I said about Uber and DoorDash, and there's a bunch of young white people like just homeless on the corners, like you know, with signs on, stuff like that, and I've never seen that, like young white people in burbs like Birmingham and Royal Oak and stuff like that, straight up the freeway. It's like, bro, that guy's like 25, 30. Like he's a millennial.
So we do have things to complain about, but it's our own government, our own society, our own corporations, and that's the things we need to focus on and fix, and not focus on like, oh, we're MAGA, we're Trump, we believe, you know, abortion, individual rights, capitalism, blah. And then the left is like, you know, equality, you know, like identity. Let's protect black and brown people, like, and it's just like
climate change.
Yeah. That's a real thing that we do need to focus on, and I do believe in that. And I think there's a lot of conspiracy, crazy shit. I don't know where you stand on a lot of these.
No, I do, but I'm talking about when they capitalize on it.
We should talk about that a whole nother day. QAnon shit was crazy, bro.
Yeah.
Crazy. And there's a whole long history of occultism and.
Yeah.
It gets to that same factor on abortion. It's like everybody wants to protect babies.
Yeah.
And like the whole Epstein thing.
Ooh, God. Yeah, we're gonna have another podcast.
The Epstein shit
it's so
crazy.
natural. I love talking to you, bro. I swear to God. Like we always have, even when like we were at Niles' graduation, like, you know, once we got our table, like it was just deep conversations between everyone who was at that table. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but we're already been here for an hour and a half.
Cool.
But I love this, bro. I'm so glad you came, dude.
Yeah, me too.
This is great.
Yeah, and I love you and your sister, and like y'all are for real like fam to me. You know, like I look to you guys. You know, as like siblings for real.
And you're always like a mentor to me too, because, you know, like I said, when I found myself falling for a lot of the like propaganda, just the bullshit, and, you know, like especially when Trump was targeting Mexicans and blacks and trying to get them on their side and stuff, and then you know, he basically had you turn against your own people. You know what I mean? You know. And it was you and your post that had me thinking twice about what I said and what I was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, I appreciate that and respect that. You know,
I'm happy with that. Man. I'm glad. I mean, because I was just like ranting online frustration. So like, it's happy to know that I was like helping influence people.
But so did I. You know, then I see your post and like, oh, let me delete that shit. Let me delete what I just said. You know, before the rise up guy. You know, like it takes me down. You know. But so I appreciate it, bro. I appreciate you coming out.
Likewise, dude.
And everything, bro. So.
Hell yeah.
Peace and love.